Equal representation is an important aspect of our democratic life here in Alberta. Recently, there's been a lot of talk about an independent Alberta. Albertans are apt to protect their ways of life and speak for what they want and what they think is right. Drew Barnes is the independent MLA for Cypress Medicine Hat, and he's no stranger to standing up for and speaking out for what he believes is right. Drew Barnes joins me now to talk about the issues facing Alberta. Drew, thanks so much for joining me today.
Thanks for talking to me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. So, Drew, there's been a lot said over the years about equalization of payments and spreading Alberta's wealth across the country. You were part of that Fair Deal panel, and one of the recommendations of the panel was to consider the creation of a provincial police force. So we've heard that this is a very expensive option, but can you maybe tell us why the provincial police force might be a good idea for the people of Alberta?
Well, great. Thank you for that. Well, first of all, more control over our policing. Too often, rural crime is reaching extremes in Alberta. Albertans aren't feeling safe. Albertans aren't being protected. First of all, this would allow Albertans to have more control over the quality of their policing and directing it. Secondly, it comes down to a large part of the leverage in the situation we're in with our Canadian partners. Not only do we send upwards of $25 billion a year to Ottawa, the relationship has been defined to me as even abusive at times. We can't get pipelines. We can't get free trade with our Canadian partner. And that brings back the quality of life and the income for Alberta families and Alberta communities. So there's some of us that believe that, yes, we want to be a strong part of Canada, but we need equity and fairness. So things like our own police force, like Ontario and Quebec both already have, would not only give us the opportunity for more say and control over our policing, but it would help Ottawa understand that Albertans want to have more control over their situation, and we want a fair deal. We want resource movement, and that would be a good first step.
Mm-hmm. So considering that idea of a provincial police force, you obviously see value there where others say it's just too expensive?
Well, I think part of the problem there is Premier Kenney. My goodness, in his third year, he has lost so much trust with Albertans and Alberta municipalities. He hasn't clearly conveyed to our municipalities how it would work and how the cost would be. As an example, I understand that right now the federal government supports Alberta to the tune of about $350 million a year for policing. But again, in some municipalities, were understaffed. And secondly, the cost of policing has just been increased substantially. I mean, God bless the individual work that individual Rcmp officers do, but I understand they just all got a $20,000 retroactive raise, which of course, eventually the taxpayer will have to pay that. So with the other financial situations that Ottawa's boxed themselves into, it's only going to get less and less likely that they'll continue to support policing, through Alberta. So let's put Alberta families first in mind. Let's make our communities safer. Secondly, let's have more say over our police force and where we need them. And thirdly, let's show the rest of Canada that it's time that Alberta be treated with equality and fairness, that we get resource movement, and doing things like the police force are a step towards showing that we can be more autonomous.
Mm-hmm. So do you think that maybe the provincial government just has not done a good idea of educating these individual municipalities on the benefits of what a provincial police force might look like? I believe there's something like 80 some odd municipalities across Alberta that are banding together to present to the provincial government their reasons for why this is not a good idea. Do you think that they just haven't been sort of informed, or do you think that they're going into this well informed and they just still are, standing firm and saying no?
Yeah, well, I also think it's partly municipalities have had a lot of pressure on them right now, our elected representatives. For many people in Alberta, this has been a tough 2 or 3 years, even longer with the change in oil pricing 5 or 6 years ago. And municipalities are hearing from their constituents that they can't raise taxes anymore. So good, caring councillors and mayors and reeves are are concerned about having to pass more costs back to their ratepayers. So I think that's where it starts. So but then the secondary problem is sometimes I'm hearing about how because of staffing issues that the RCMP can't be in enough places throughout rural Alberta, especially. So we need to have these services. So I guess that to me that's where it starts. We need a provincial government that shows Alberta municipalities that when it comes to issues like safety, we'll be there for them. And of course, one of the silver linings of this bump in oil prices in the last little while is the Alberta Treasury is once again, a lot of money flowing in. So there'll be some extra money for important things. I very much would like to see government smaller, but also policing is a key part of it. So that's where it starts. Caring municipal councillors and mayors are concerned about the taxation future for their constituents. And then secondly, Jason Kenney has lost the trust of so many Albertans. They're wondering, if they're just wondering how this will all play out. So I think it's important to get to the table with Ottawa, let them know that yes, we want to be a strong part of Canada, but if not, we are prepared to be more autonomous and independent if necessary. Alberta should be the freest and most prosperous place.
Yeah, interesting. Now, Drew, can you maybe describe what this transition from RCMP to an Alberta police force would look like?
Yes. Well, Alberta used to have our own police force provincially in the 1930s, so it's not impossible. Basically, March 31st of any year, we have to give notice to the RCMP that we want out of the contract, even though I think it's 35 years left on the contract. So we can get out of it. Of course, Fort Macleod, you remember 6 or 7 years ago, they were going to set up a police training center at Fort Macleod. I mean, here we are on the basis of where we could do that again. Hey, and let's not forget that all the municipalities, the bigger ones rather, have their own police forces now anyway, except Red Deer. So Medicine Hat, Lethbridge, Edmonton, Calgary, Grand Prairie, we have our own police forces. So the training that could be in collaboration and coordination with these municipality police forces and our provincial police force is there anyway. So I believe it's just a matter of picking the right time, giving the RCMP the proper notice, putting out to our sheriffs and the existing RCMP members now that there'll be jobs available, making sure that our training center, whether it's in Fort Macleod or somewhere else, is set up ready to go. And I think what will result will be much safer communities for Albertans, and long term, I don't think there'll be any budget consequences.
Okay, and you bring up an interesting point about how all the larger centers already have police force. We're talking more rural areas. One of the issues we do hear from rural Albertans is the lack of law enforcement in those rural areas. So do you believe that there's an equitable solution for these crime rates? And would the Alberta Police Force be that?
Yes, absolutely. That's a very good point. I hear that all the time about how there may be only one or two officers covering 400 miles by 400 miles. And of course, we can all only be in one place at a time. Also, I hear quite a bit that our RCMP and our municipal police forces are having a little trouble coordinating the regional policing. As an example, criminals don't just do crimes in Medicine Hat, they'll run into Cypress County or 40 Mile County and Medicine Hat. So there is some element of cross jurisdictions. I absolutely believe that a provincial police force with the quality men and women that are out there to serve in it would be better at making sure that we were all protected more so, and to make sure that these jurisdictions that cross a bit would have better collaboration. So I think in the long run, we'd all be safer. We could all. And again, let's also not underestimate the fact that the Alberta Police Chief would be closer connected to Cabinet and the Premier, and the direction and the planning that could go from there would be better for all of us as well.
Oh, that's a good point. Interesting point that you bring up there. So, speaking of Jason Kenney, where do you see Alberta headed in the next 2 years with Jason Kenney and the UCP?
It's absolutely clear that the UCP cannot win with Jason Kenney as leader. The last year shows the NDP way ahead in the polls and out fundraising Jason Kenney led UCP by miles. So it's essential that Albertans do what it takes to remove Jason Kenney as the leader of the UCP party, so the UCP can try to determine if they can go forward and present a new face for Albertans. If we don't do it, we're certainly looking at the NDP and the overreach and the big government that comes with them. It's 3 years in, and Jason Kenney has so not met the expectations of Albertans. He was given a grassroots, fiscally conservative mandate. And of course, that's resulted in sentences like "I'm the one that holds the pen" or "I want a new base." And unfortunately, Jason Kenney has lost the trust and the confidence of Albertans. And unless unless a change is made there, we'll be looking at another NDP government and the devastation that comes with that.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you, with the numerous other political interests on the right side of the political spectrum in Alberta, do you think the NDP could form the next Alberta government?
Well, the polls for at least a year now are showing that they're in the majority territory, and they would, if everything is as it is today, that they would form the majority government. But let's not forget that consistently 75% of Albertans identify or vote fiscally conservative. They are looking for an option where they can place their vote with trust and confidence. And unfortunately, Jason Kenney has lost both of those two things. So whether that means a change in the leadership of the UCP, whether that means a new party on the right starting to fill that vacuum where Albertans are looking for economic freedom, individual opportunity, and fiscal conservatism. We're down now. The next election is the last Monday in May 2023, so we're about 14 months away. This spring is going to be very interesting as people start to figure out, their paths and where they want to go. And of course, that starts with the April 9th leadership review of the UCP of Jason Kenney's leadership. Hopefully that will be the day of real conservative change.
And Drew, where do you see yourself in the next Alberta election?
I'm very, very grateful to represent Cypress Medicine Hat, very grateful to represent Albertans for the last 10 years, 3 terms. And I believe I have the energy and the desire to still serve. Of course, I was ejected from caucus by Jason Kenney last May. And basically, he said he welcomed my public disagreement and debate, but he obviously didn't mean that when I was ejected. So I'm looking for a path forward so I can continue to represent Albertans that believe in economic freedom, individual opportunity, and public programs that are both effective and efficient. I'll be watching what happens very closely on April 9th. And if Jason Kenney is no longer the leader of the UCP, that may again become an option. And I just hope and pray that I have the opportunity to make the right decisions for my family, first of all, and Albertans.
Okay, and if Jason Kenney is still there, you would continue to run as an independent?
I'm certainly going to consider it. I will consider joining another party. I've also put out that Alberta should maybe have a rural party only. There's 87 seats in the Alberta legislature. 41 are not part of Edmonton and Calgary. I've put out that possibly we should start a party that just runs in those 41 seats that are not part of Edmonton and Calgary. There's a lot of good conservatives in Edmonton and Calgary as well, but this would allow us to focus on truly rural, let's call them non-metro concerns, and work in collaboration. It doesn't have to be divisive. We could do this as a potential coalition government. So I put that out there, and I've got pretty good reviews on that. A lot of people like the idea. Some think it could be bigger. But as I said earlier, we're now 14 months away from the next election, so it's time to make those decisions between now and May 1st.
Drew Barnes, thank you so much for joining me today.
I appreciate it. Love the chance to talk. You have a good rest of the day.